And for me, it's a very timely discussion because of the changing nature of work. The world of work is changing because of advancements in technology. Globalization is happening very fast. And so there are a lot of things that are happening also that we must be aware of, such that we can be well positioned to take advantage of these things in the place of work. One of the very first things we talked about is the fact that because of the changing world of work and the impact of globalization, where the world has become borderless, we live in a global age, a global village. Employers and employees need to look at their work, their organizations, businesses, to be able to take advantage and remain competitive. Competition not from the place of competing with your fellow business or companies in the same sector alone, but competitive also to be able to attract the right talents to move your company and your business forward. You want to attract those talents. You also want to retain the talents. It takes a lot of work, and it's something that has to be done deliberately and with a lot of intention. And so on the part of the employer, we did mention that a lot of practices today, things need to be changed, processes, procedures, how we do businesses, to be a lot more efficient, to be a lot more effective in delivering our products to our targeted customers. And for the employees as well, we also said that it is important, very, very critical for us to skill up in whatever field of endeavor or professionalism we find ourselves. Whether you are a banker, whether you are a lawyer, whether you are a businessman, whatever it is you do, it's very important for you to learn new ways of doing things. Because of how we were brought up, how we were trained, it's very difficult sometimes to unlearn old ways of doing things. So one of the very fundamental things that we must do is to purge ourselves, right? Cleanse ourselves from how we used to know how to do things, how we were trained, how we were taught. There are a whole lot of new ways of doing things today. And it's so easy in the internet age where we can just log on to the internet, go to sites like Coursera, EDX, lessons, a lot of sites where you can learn new things, courses that you can take that are not expensive, and before you know, you are adding new knowledge, you are gaining new insights as to how you do things, and it shows over time when you engage with your fellow colleagues at work, fellow colleagues outside of work, your level of thought, your insights, the value that you bring to the table. You see that with time, you continue to improve yourself. And then you also realize that, yes, in as much as we play locally, Pastor Olumide Emmanuel spoke at length about globalization and the movements that we have today and how it is critically important. Even though you are in a geographical location, you must do everything you can to be globally relevant. In other words, I may be in Lagos, but I am globally relevant. I have the skills to be able to add value wherever I find myself, provided I remain rooted and connected to my source, right? And so that's very, very important. And as we move along on a day-to-day and how we manage our businesses, as business owners, as companies, as employees, we must bear these things in mind. It's very, very important. Now, for employees, we talked about how important it is, even after you have skilled up, after you are knowledgeable, it's very critical that we should be able to sell ourselves, market ourselves, right? It's a very difficult skill. You must be very intentional and very deliberate about how to position yourself. You may be the best in a particular field, but if you do not know how to sell yourself, let people recognize you, Make it easy for people to identify you that, look, you are a specialist in this field, you are a specialist in this area, and you can talk about the value that you bring, some of the things that you have done that have catapulted your organization or past organization to another level because of a skill or something that you did very differently. And that's why it's important that in the world of work today, you must have a professional profile as an employee. Critically important, and make it easy for people to find you. A lot of people have gotten fantastic positions, appointments, offers, just simply because it was easy for people to find them, whether it's via LinkedIn profile or even having your resumes on specialized profile platforms where people can go to seek for talent. And that's why you find a lot of HR practitioners today, when they are looking for people, sometimes they don't do advertisements to the whole world. No, they know where to go and look for people like that. And they start to do headhunting. Sometimes it's word of mouth. Sometimes it's by referral. So you must be able to showcase that, look, I've got this value, I've got this skill, and I am positioned to be able to turn around whatever difficult situation or value that an employer is looking for to move their business to the next level. And that's very, very important, like we said. For some of us, we don't have professional CVs, we don't have resumes. If you say, send me your CV now, for some people, they don't even have it. So, and that CV or the resume is just that simple 1 or 2 page document that somebody can see and say, okay, this person has done this person has done that, this person, I think, would be able to perform if given the opportunity. Now, one of the things you can do, a disservice you can do to yourself, right, is not to have your CVs or resume done professionally. It's not easy, right? You need people who can advise on how to prepare your resume. It's not just by writing, oh, I've worked in this company between this 2020 and 2022, full stop. What were you doing there? Were you just decorating the office? What value did you bring to the table? So you must be able to show that. And these things are professionally done, and you can seek HR practitioners to help out. Even if you have to pay for it, I tell you, it's an investment that is worth making. Beyond your CV, you can have a professional profile where people talk about what you've done before, where you are coming from, your education, professional work experience, the things that you are interested in, passionate about, how you want to change the world, what you are looking forward to doing in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. These things are very, very important, and we should not take them for granted. Marketing, positioning yourself is very, very important in today's world of work. So we also talked about having been given an appointment or a role, and it's time to look at your employment contract. That is the time to take your time to read the contract, read the terms and conditions. Don't take it for granted that as soon as you are given that 20-page document, the only thing there you want to see that you are interested in is the salary. No, it goes beyond the salary. It goes beyond it, right? Read it very well. That's the time to negotiate. Organizations, a lot of time for particular roles, they already have a salary band in mind. For some, they have about 4 bands, 5 bands for that same role, depending on who you are. They're expecting you to come. So come and tell us the value that you are going to add. And then we can decide whether to put you on the lower band of that role or the higher band or the highest band of that role. And depending on who you are sometimes, a lot of organizations, depending on the value that they see that you are bringing, they would even go and get approval to cancel the existing band and create something new for you. Well, it depends on who you are discussing with, what you are bringing to the table, and how you are negotiating at that point in time. The fact that you've been offered something doesn't mean you have to accept it. No, it doesn't mean you have to. It's the power of negotiation, and that's why it is a contract. It's not one party say, yeah, take, sign. No, it's negotiation. And that's why it's important to know your worth, know your value. Know that in this field, I am the best. You can't find a second like me. right? And your confidence, your courage, your disposition, you know, it boils down from your knowledge and value about that particular field of endeavor. Are we together? So that's very, very important. Now, we also talked about a few things about, yes, we work hard, they need to add value, as well as they need to also have some sort of balance with family, friends, as well as work. So it's not only about work, right? You also have family to take care of. You also have relationships that you must build that are long-term inclined. If something happens to you at work today, who will be there for you? If you become indisposed today, you become sick, who is going to be there? It's the same friends and family who will be there for you during your tough time. So it's important also not to neglect that. And we also talked about the importance of planning for the future. A lot of us say the reason why we work, oh, it's for my family, it's for my children, my wife, my husband, you know, and all that. So if something happens to you today, how are they going to cope while you are indisposed? How? Do you have insurance in place? Is there education insurance for the family? Is it life insurance if something happens? You know, do you have proper arrangements around who your next of kin is? Who can speak to you? Who is a contact person when you are not there? When you are not able to make decision about yourself, your care? Who is going to be there? Do you have that? A next of kin that really, really, really knows you, that can speak for you, that can represent you. Do you have that? We talked about estate planning, right? Some of us, when we start talking about wills, we start thinking, God forbid bad thing, I'm not going to die now. It's not about dying now. It's about being proactive and planning for the future. If something happens today and you are not there, you are no more, what happens to the family? We've heard of cases where as soon as somebody dies, family members are coming in and they start, you know, all sort of family fights start to happen. In the absence of proper documents like a will, or even for some people today, you can do companies registered, you have shares which you allot to people. You can set up a proper trust where the beneficiaries are your loved ones, and you have professional trust managers who can take care of your assets, estate, even while you are still alive. Those things can be done today. And you don't have to wait until when something drastic happens and then you are no more. So we talked about those things. And for organizations as well, business continuity planning is very important. If something happens today, and for example, the building, your warehouse, your factory, where you operate from, gets damaged, let's say it's a bomb or a terrorist attack, what happens when your physical location, presence, has been distorted or scattered? How quickly can you resume or recommence business? Do you have an alternate site? Are your data, documents, are they backed up? Are they in the cloud? So if something happened, this is the age of internet, cyber attack. Somebody takes over your entire organization where you can't do anything because all your internet presence, your data, has been taken over and hijacked by someone in the dark. What do you do? Do you have any backup somewhere? We saw what happened during COVID, total lockdown. A lot of businesses were paralyzed. A lot of businesses have not resumed or returned back to normal because of the impact of COVID. And for some companies who were already positioned to be able to do businesses virtually, businesses like Zoom, they thrived. A lot of us still use Zoom till today to do conferencing and all sort of things. So it's very important that we think about these things as individuals, as businesses, as we move along. Then we talked about contract as well. That after you've read the dotted lines, you've done all that, you are about to sign, you've negotiated. We also spoke about now that you have signed, right? Or even before you sign, rather, it's also time to do due diligence on this organization, on this company. What is their value? What are their values? What is their culture like? Are they interested in you, your development, your training, your career? Or is it just about the work and your deliverables? Are they interested in developing you, also helping you to be a better version of yourself professionally, right? So some people will choose to take a lesser paying job because of things like that you can't really quantify. Just because of that, value, what ethics do they hold very important and there? So these are some of the things that you also want to consider, which is very important when you look at the world of work today. Beyond the contracts that you are signing, find out about the organization and whether people thrive when they join. You see some organizations where the employees don't leave. Why? There's something they are doing. The employees are happy to work there. They build their entire career. They retire there. There's something these people are doing. That's why people don't want to leave them. So it's important you also do your due diligence. Now, we moved into contract. We've started work. It's very important that employers take steps in also protecting their employees in the course of work. And that's why companies have policies, they have processes, they have SLAs in how they do things. Now, one critical policy that we talked about is issues around harassment, bullying. I mean, when we say harassment, sexual harassment, right, is one of those. Senior managers or people in a higher position, they cannot be lording it over their subordinates in the office, especially when it's a man, woman, male, female sort of things, where a superior is talking to a junior colleague who is a female, say, "Come here, why are you walking like that?" Just shaking everything around. In the place of work, it is unacceptable. So you must have this sort of policies to protect people. If you don't, you as an employer, you would be vicariously liable, such that if an employee leaves that organization and says, "Oh, I no longer feel safe working here and I had to leave," and it can be seen as unfair termination, unfair dismissal from the place of work, and the employer may be liable to paying damages to that employee whose psychological mental state was harassed up to the point where that person left the organization. And if employers don't take steps to put in place checks, balances, have the right policies in place, and when things happen, you make sure you nip it on the board. That's the only way you can be protected as an employer. Very, very important. Now, we talked about contracts. Usually, they will come to an end at some point. Typically, how would an employment contract come to an end? If it's a fixed-term contract, at the expiration of that contract, it comes to an end. It is determined. Sometimes it's by termination. And we must understand that employer and employees, they both have rights to terminate. For the employee, what you typically say is that, "Oh, I have resigned." In other words, you are terminating the contract. For the employer, they will typically say, "Oh, your services are no longer required." That's termination, right? You cannot prevent one person from leaving an organization. It is their inalienable rights. They can decide to leave and they can decide to continue to work, provided the terms of the engagement is okay for them to do so. An employer cannot say, "No, you cannot resign, you cannot go." It's not, you can't do that. And you also cannot force an employer to continue to have you in a place of work when they say, "Sorry, it's time to go." Right? We talked about principles around resignation. And we said that when the contract expires and one party gives notice that "I am leaving," fundamentally, the contract is determined at that point in time, right? How do you give that notice? Notice can be, most times the contract will say written notice. Most employment contracts would have 1 month's notice. So if the 1 month's notice has been given, can the employer say, "No, I reject your notice"? We have said it is not possible. The employer cannot reject a resignation letter. Do you need the employer to approve that notice, that letter? It's not required for it to be formally accepted or for it to be formally approved before it becomes effective. Can you terminate an employment contract after a letter of resignation has been tendered? We said that the answer is no, because the moment the resignation letter has been submitted, there's nothing left on the table anymore to be terminated. Are we together? Now, in today's world, we also said that there are about 3 grounds, right, for an employment to be terminated. And the most popular one is non-performance, right? If you're not performing on the job, the employer can let you go, properly documented. If it's misconduct, you have to go. If it is redundancy, maybe your role is no longer relevant as a result of changes in technology or restructuring, right? Then there's no point keeping you there, so you have to go, fundamentally. Now, what is important for the employer to do is that you must document these things, because the law now says that if you are terminating an employment contract, you must provide a reason, right? Gone are those days where an employer can terminate a contract for no reason, for good reason, or for bad reason. Today, the law says you must provide a reason why you are terminating. And if you provide a reason, that reason must be justifiable. In other words, it must be true. You must be able to back it up. So if you say somebody is not performing, where is the evidence? So that's why it's critically important that for employers, when you engage people, you must document it, write down their job expectation, their job requirements, what you expect them to deliver on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, on an annual basis. And then they have a KPI, key performance indicators, how you would measure whether they are performing or not. And as you are doing your review, either quarterly or monthly or biannually or yearly, you're also documenting the level of performance. This one met, this one not met, this one met. Overall, have you performed above board, above average, or below peer? It must be documented, because if you want to sever that relationship, those are the reasons you need to have. And that will protect you in the case of a case of unfair termination of employment. So very, very important. Now, we also said that employment can be terminated where there is gross misconduct. In other words, if the misconduct of the employee is so grave as to go to the root of the relationship between employer and employee, then the employer can terminate that employment contract. It could be on grounds of fraud, misconduct, assault, bribery, extortion, for so many, intoxication, alcoholism, drug abuse in the place of, those are red lines that no employer would be expected to tolerate. And so those would be grounds to terminate the employment contract, right? Now, we also talked about termination of employment as well as dismissal. Dismissal, gross misconduct. You can dismiss for some of the reasons I just mentioned, right? Now, when you are doing that, you must also provide an opportunity for the employee to be heard. It's called fair hearing, right? Because of the nature of the allegation, it goes to the root. So you must afford the person an opportunity to be heard. That's why most organizations in their disciplinary process would have, you've done something wrong, they issue you with a query, you respond within 24 hours. If it's not satisfactory, they invite you to attend a formal DC that has been set up. That's a disciplinary panel or committee that has been set up for you to come and defend yourself on the allegations and the violations of the company's disciplinary process, right? And then you attend and you defend yourself. If it is satisfactory, perhaps you are let off the hook. If not, it's time to go. A formal letter will be issued. So that is dismissal. There are also cases where that formal disciplinary committee can be dispensed with if the nature of the offense or allegation is so grave, like embezzlement. You've stolen company's money. The evidence is clear under your watch, right? You can be summarily dismissed. Even though you have a right to fair hearing, you can be heard by explaining your side of the story, but you can be summarily, without much going to formal DC, you can be summarily dismissed for gross misconduct. So these are some of the ways that the relationship can be severed. We talked about redundancy as well, right? Where a particular role in an organization is no longer relevant, right? Within the structure of that organization, then it can be a ground for termination. Of course, when it comes to redundancies, also guided by law, there's that discussion that takes place between employer and employee, and then some compensation, redundancy payment is made, and then you are off. So in summary, those are the things that we discussed on Sunday around resignation, around termination of employment, around dismissal, discipline in the place of work, generally speaking. So, yes, questions. So I think at this point in time, we can start to take questions. For those who noted questions on Sunday, who must have sent it to the legal department, or of course, you can also ask your question now.
So we have, thank you, Barrister Tunde. We have a couple of questions here. Okay, this one says, Sir, my closing time is 5 p.m. as stated in my employment letter, but my boss does not let me leave till it's 6 or 7 p.m. He deliberately loads me with work from 4 p.m. How can I address this?
All right. Line manager from heaven. It is true that in our employment contracts, you have a set time. The resumption time is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Very true. It is also true that you have a job description, which says, this is your job description, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 10. But almost always in all of the contracts, you would find that omnibus clause that says, and other duties, assignments as may be assigned by the employer from time to time. Even the place and location of work, right? A lot of times in the contract, you see, and other locations that you may be assigned to perform the duties of this contract, right? Even if it is 8 to 5, you can decide one day and say, sorry, my contract says 8 to 5. When it's 5 o'clock, I leave. However, as an employee, you have to be emotionally intelligent. You have to be. His contract is there, black and white. You can invoke your rights, no problem, it's fine. Your line manager would, oh, okay, I hear you, you can go. But is that type of organization, do you think you have a future there? Right? Would you be seen as a team player? Would you be seen as somebody who is willing to go the extra mile to get tasks, assignments achieved, performed, without looking at time? So if you are looking at 8 to 5, that means if they even call you on Saturday or Sunday, say, you won't pick your call. So it's not a typical yes or no answer. Or when they call you, you say no, it's past 5. Right? We must allow wisdom to direct us. They say wisdom is what? It's profitable to direct in all cases. Are we together? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation, sir. I currently work with an employer without a contract of employment. Can I force my employer to enter into a contract now? Or what options do I have available?
Okay. This is very important, very critical, because we mentioned it on Sunday that some people just say, resume, you resume. You work. There's no clear terms and conditions that speaks to the job that you do, your remuneration, your leave entitlements, allowances, and those things are very important. So by the law, you can actually start work without a formal contract. But ideally, after 3 months, the expectation is that your employer should issue you with an employment contract. So it won't be out of place for you to request formally that, oh, excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma'am. I have been working here now for XYZ period. The terms of my employment are not defined. In the course of my few months here or years here, I've been very dutiful, loyal, obedient, and I do my work and all that. However, I would like for my employment contract to be issued to me. That is very much in order. So please ask for it, and ask very nicely, politely. But it's your right to ask to have a contract. You do have that right.
Okay, this one says, can an employee proceed on leave after he or she has sent a mail or memo concerning his or her leave and it was not granted, not approved?
All right. If you proceed on leave without approval, you are going on a wall. You know what that means? Away without leave of absence. So you can't take it because, oh, it's my leave, I have sent a mail, I have done this. No. We work under rules, policies, guidelines within an organization. You can't just take off, right? Engage your line manager and have that discussion around leave. In fact, some organizations, it's at the beginning of the year, just to ensure that, and it's part of the work-life balance we were talking about. You work, you need time to let off steam, go away, go and rest for a few days. Because that's the only way even your employer can get the best of you. That's the only way your productivity can remain, at the highest level. If you've been burning and running an engine without service, without allowing the engine will collapse one day. So a lot of organizations actually understand that. And for some people, it's even an offense not to go on leave. Because they understand the value of taking that time for leave. And so most organizations now have structure in place where from the beginning of the year, you have a leave plan, approved, discussed. And your line manager, HOD, it's like they have no choice but to have that discussion, agree on the days when you are going on leave, so long as it does not affect the schedule of that unit or department. So it's the duty of the HOD as well to look at all the people in that unit. All of you can't go on leave at the same time. You can't shut down the department or the company because you want to go on leave, right? And that's why some people, it happens that they won't go on leave from January to November. They will not go on leave. It's that December that everybody wants to take off because it's Christmas period and New Year. They want to take off and go and celebrate. They want to shut down the business. For some businesses, that is their peak period where all staff must be on ground. For some organizations, you can't go on leave in December by policy. You cannot, right? So it's important that you have that discussion and allow your line manager or HR to approve your leave. Don't just take off because, it's your right. That engagement is very important.
Okay, this one says, can my employer make me sign a new contract of employment? That's within the contract. He's been working or she has been working within the contract, a new contract of employment.
So a contract is a contract. A contract is capable of being what? Amended, renegotiated, depending on the need. So if there is need for your contract of employment to be renegotiated, remember, the employer is saying, I want us to renegotiate our employment terms. This is a copy. Read it, discuss it, and if you are fine, you sign. But you cannot say no. Is this old contract I will continue to run with? Right? Because things can happen. Things may change. It may be maybe based on recent learnings, right? There's need to update that contract. You cannot say, no, I will not negotiate. There is a place for being reasonable. So there's nothing wrong for you to have a contract renegotiated, including an employment contract. There's nothing wrong.
Good day, sir. My question is about employees' termination dismissal. Is it possible for an employer to dismiss an employee based on false rumor that our employer is having an affair with ex-staff that was dismissed last year, special needs school? The employee also was not given a dismissal letter. She was dismissed with mouth, and a salary, stacking, or other entitlements were not paid, and dismissal was suddenly or shocking.
All right, these things happen, right? But based on the things we've said on Sunday and today, of course, you know the answer to this question, right? If you are going to be dismissed, it cannot be based on rumor. It can't be based on rumor. If it's an offense or an allegation that is contrary to an infraction against company policy, company processes, a formal notice must be issued to you saying that you have contravened XYZ, explain why you should not be disciplined. That must be done. So if it's based on a rumor that, oh, you are having an affair with an ex-staff and things like that, that's not a crime, really. But if it's something that the employer doesn't like, you cannot be, the employer cannot resort to dismissal the way this person has put it. There's no basis for that dismissal. If it is challenged, it will be declared unfair and illegal, as the case may be. And this person would have a right to actually file some claims against that type of employer who has, in essence, taken the law out of beyond limits. And we said on Sunday as well that when your employment is being terminated, let's not even dismissal now. If you have entitlements to be paid to you by your employer, that payment should be done concurrently at the time of exiting. The employer cannot say, oh, I'll pay you after, just go, I'll pay. That will be deemed unlawful termination of employment. So if the person is entitled to 1 month's salary in lieu because you've not provided the adequate notice, you must pay that person that money at the time the person is leaving, not a month after, 2, 3, 6 months, or never. That will be deemed as unlawful termination. So unless there is an issue of impropriety or you have gross misconduct involved, your terminal pay must also be paid. You are entitled to it. You are entitled to it. Are we together? Yeah.
Okay. My employee deducts a certain amount from my salary each time I come late without such provision being in my contract of employment. Can I challenge such acts?
All right. Your contract specifies the time for resuming at work and a closure time, a closing time. So if you're supposed to resume 8 a.m. in the morning and you resume 9 a.m. in the morning, what it means is that you are supposed to put in at least 40 hours of work that week. There's no way you can meet that 40 hours. A lot of employers overlook it. Employees come late. Sometimes they say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm running late. It's traffic, or it's this and that, or I had to stay all night because of family emergency. And a lot of employers would be understanding because this is a relationship that you have. Employer-employee, it's a relationship. So a lot of times, most employers would not take punitive actions simply because, oh, you are 1 hour or 2, 3 hours late. Sometimes you could have managed the employer ahead to say, or even your line manager ahead, I'm sorry, I won't be in until 12 noon today. I have blah, 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 blah. Just give reasons why you won't be resuming. But if it gets to the point where for every hour that you don't show up, right, you are being debited for not showing up, can you complain for it? You can't complain because the expectation is that you put in your 40-hour work during that week, but you have not done so. So should I pay as an employer for work that you have not done? Right? So what is fair is fair. Are we together? what is fair is fair. If you've not put in the hours of work required, then you cannot claim to be entitled to getting the full pay, right? So again, depends on the organization. Most of the employers are very flexible when it comes to coming late to work. But if it becomes a perpetual thing where almost every day being late, then of course the disciplinary policy will kick in. Coming late to work is against company policy, company processes. And if it's repeated first time, second time, third time, the issue first warning, second warning, third, then you may be on your way out. So we have to be very diligent. Thank you.
Sir, I have been working in an organization for years without a written contract of employment. Can I say there's a contract of employment? If not, how do I rectify this?
So it's similar to the question we took earlier. You have a right to request for your employment contract. So if you don't have it, by all means, go and engage your employer, request for your employment contract, the terms of engagement at least. Is very important because that is what protects you, other than the general labor law provisions that may kick in, right? But you can't be working somewhere professionally, and there are no terms and conditions that guide what you are entitled to and what you are not entitled to. So you have a right to request for it.
Okay, this question is based on investments. It's not under the topic we're dealing with today. It says, what are the better kind of investments for young people who are looking to invest, e.g. shares? What organization can help? Okay.
I was just going to say, contact your investment advisor.
What organization can help a starter in their investment journey? So the third one says, do dismissal cases get to be reconciled or reconsidered in future for an employment in the same firm?
So if I understand the last question, somebody has been dismissed from an organization a few years back, and then the question is, can that same organization revisit that dismissal case,
exactly,
maybe re-employ you in the future? Is that,
yes,
the question?
Yes.
So it's up to the organization to decide whether they want to do so or they don't want. Circumstances might have changed, and it may be possible that at the time when you were dismissed, yes, the facts may be there that gives the ground for dismissal, but an employer can in the future also, perhaps because they know you and where you are coming from and when you have been, and they can say, oh, this is a new person. We have no issue bringing that person back to the organization, right? That's very possible, but it's up to the organization to consider. It's a different case if they later found out that the basis of that dismissal was wrong and that they were wrong. Then that's a different conversation, right? So
that'll be all.
All right. So that's fine. All right, the question says, with recent JACPA bandwagon, employees leave the organization without following the prescribed notice of leave by the organization. What can be done to curb this? This man must be HR manager. So it is true, that is our reality today. Employees just show up on you one morning and say, Oga, I got to go. When are you leaving? I'm traveling tomorrow night, sir. So these things happen. Now, you have a contract that says, if you are going to leave, give me 30 days notice at least. 30 days, that's what the contract says. So if you fail to give that notice, what are you doing? It is a breach of contract. Breach of contract. Some employers may just want to be nice to you. They overlook it and say, okay, I wish you all the best. You can leave, and they just move on. But by contract, If you do not provide that notice, you are breaching the terms of the contract. And what will be the recourse of the employer? If you fail to provide your 1 month, 2, 3 months notice as per contract, then you'll be liable to compensate your employer, right, for not providing that notice. And in most cases, it's the value of your 1 month salary. If it's a 1 month notice that you should have given, then you must pay your employer 1 month salary for not giving them the notice. If it's 3 months notice, then you must pay your 3 month salary value to that employer, for not giving them adequate notice. And we must also bear in mind that, why do you require notice? If you are engaged in a very critical role for that organization, it's also not fair to just show up one morning and say, "Oh, guy, sorry, sir, thank you for the opportunity. It's time for me to go. When are you leaving? Tomorrow or this night?" No, now. You should also consider the employer. If you were in the employer's shoes, how would you feel? With no backup, no time for them to start to look for a replacement for you? You just want to disappear? No. So if you leave the role, nobody, your junior people there, expose the organization. So again, that's why it's a risk for employers, and that's why employers also, as part of business processes, you also want to have succession planning, so that if your critical staff leaves the organization, you don't suffer. So maybe you have middle-level managers who can step in, hold the fort, pending when they get a replacement, or things like that. And employees can also be nice. If you know you are leaving, tell your line manager, unless you are fighting. Tell the employer. In fact, you can go the extra mile, help them to get your own replacement. Go the extra mile. So that's it. Any other question? One from anyone? Any other question? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your teachings. Okay, how do we help someone that, instead of going on leave, you now tell you that they should convert your leave to cash? So how do you go around that?
Okay, thank you, ma. So it also happens that you can monetize your leave, right? So monetization of leave. There's a delicate balance to monetizing leave. Some organizations actually have that as a policy, where if you choose not to go on leave, they can pay you for working. Remember that your leave period is usually paid. So that's 25 days, 20 days, or 30 days that you have in a year. Even though you are away on leave, your employer is paying for that period. So if you now choose to forego your leave, right, the employer can also incentivize you by paying for those days that you've remained at work instead of going on leave. But how do you then balance the need to take out time to refresh, to restore your strength, to come back with a new mindset, refreshed, energized, to continue to do the job? So that's where you have that delicate balancing. At the discretion of the employer, for those who already have such a policy, it's not a problem, because the policy says if you don't go, you can ask for your leave to be monetized. That's fine. But if you don't have that monetization policy and it's just based on request, the employer is not obliged to accept the request, because it's discretionary. So the provisions are there for you to go on leave, and already the employer is paying for the period when you will be away on leave in most cases. So if you then want to remain at work and also expect for that leave to be monetized, it's at the discretion of the employer. Depending on your role and the job that you do, if the employer considers it critical that, if you go on leave at this time, I may be impacted, the employer can say, okay, yeah, I'm happy for you to stay, I'll monetize it and stuff like that. But if not, The employer may also want to look at the consequence of you not going on leave, because you are not a machine. We are all not machines. We always need that time to refresh. Go away from that environment. Have you noticed sometimes that when you are working late in the evenings and you leave, maybe you are drafting a document or writing a paper or something, no matter how short it is, if you leave it, you come back the following morning, just a difference of 12 hours, just overnight, and you come back in the morning, you are looking at that document, am I the one that wrote this? Differently, just because you've had the benefit of sleeping for at least 6 hours. You come back refreshed, renewed, and you can look at things differently and with better insights. So I hope that's helpful, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes, do it better, do it better.